Oh, I'm embarrassed. It's been a few weeks since I've done this, and I did my whole intro muted. Goodness gracious. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Business Strategy Roundtable. Today we are graced by Craig Taylor, who's a co-founder of CyberHoot, and he's going to be taking us through his entrepreneurial journey and his expertise around security and awareness training. Craig, thank you so much for being here.
Zach, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me today.
For sure, for sure. Before we dive into security and awareness training and how it can impact your organization and how to actually do it right, I'd love if we could explore your career and entrepreneurial journey so we could get a better understanding of uh, how you became an expert in the space.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for that. So to understand me in a nutshell, you have to go back 35 years to a degree in psychology. I went to university, not sure what I wanted to become, went into psychology so I understood the human condition a little bit better, what motivates people, how do they learn, how do behaviors change, train the rat to click a button and get a food, operant conditioning, that sort of thing. But I realized very quickly I'm not PhD material. I wasn't going to stay for another 5 to 10 years to get a PhD. And that's what you needed in psychology to get a real career in it. So
What is
I,
PhD material?
uh, a desire to continue going to school for a long, long time. I was done. I got my degree and I was out. So what was interesting is I found a job in cybersecurity right out of college, and I had worked in the computer science lab at the university helping students with, I'm going to date myself, but with WordPerfect and text-based email clients, where you could type faster than the client would keep up. This is going back, 35 years in 1995, 1994. But I got a job at a firewall vendor. Early days of the internet. There was no World Wide Web back then. And I bought a bunch of O'Reilly books. O'Reilly is the technology standard for technical books on DNS, bind, SMTP. These are acronyms for the things we know and love and somewhat take for granted on the internet today, right? SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. How do you get emails from A to B? And it has to go through a firewall and those sorts of things. So I learned how the internet worked, and I went to support that vendor's firewall, and I've been in cybersecurity ever since. And parlayed that first job a few years later to go work for a large international managed service provider called Computer Sciences Corporation. They had identified that the internet is going to be a big thing, big deal. Yep, that wasn't rocket science there. And they built data centers in 3 parts of the world, one in Newark, Delaware, Copenhagen, and Sydney, Australia. And the idea was to follow the sun and support companies like DuPont and Citizens Bank and Matson Navigation, all the big Fortune 5,000 companies of the world were going to put their websites into this data center. And I was tapped to run the show for cybersecurity. And boy, did I learn all kinds of mistakes there. Overcomplicating the cybersecurity stack. We had different flavors of firewalls at the front door and the middle tier and the database tier. And we over-engineered that thing so badly, we had to dial it all back a few years later because it was very difficult to support. But what a great way to learn cybersecurity, what works, what doesn't work, the audit requirements, the prove what you do requirements, all of this stuff. Got my CISSP in 2001. So I've had that for almost 25 years. I was in the first 24,000 users. Now it's almost maybe over 1 million now. So I got that very, very early on and moved on from CSE to Vistaprint, a global outsource, a manufacturer, and JP Morgan Chase. Went through a tough exit from JP Morgan Chase. They terminated my contract. There were 2 of us fighting for one job, and my boss actually quit or didn't quit. He left JP Morgan Chase before the day I started. So I was hired by gentleman X. And before I started my job from the corporate JP Morgan Chase, my boss left the company and I was handed from manager to manager to compete with another person in the same role as me, but managed by the local vice president of that part of the company, Chase Payment Tech out of Salem, New Hampshire. You might know some of the work that they did developing Apple Pay. Apple Pay was a joint venture between JP Morgan Chase Payment Tech and Apple. Really cool stuff. Again, great experience, a lot of 80-hour work weeks, but ultimately I was released. They kept the other guy who was reporting to the local chief. And I went through a little self-evaluation, right? At 40, you say to yourself, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I've just been fired. And I founded CyberHoot. I got together with some CSC people I had worked with who were developers. There was a problem that I had witnessed multiple times from 2000 to 2015 or 14 when I founded CyberHoot around awareness training for the everyday company, for the average person, for the managed service providers and the small to medium-sized businesses of the world. I had been in Fortune 500. I'd seen, a dozen people on a cyber awareness training team assigning 45-minute trainings every month for CSC and Vistaprint and JP Morgan Chase, all these different things. And it was overwhelming for the smaller businesses of the world. They just didn't have the time. When you're a small business, you wear 12 hats on your head as the business owner, the CEO, the CFO, the HR, the benefits, everything you got to do. No one has time for that. So, it was all based on punishment, shame, fear. If you clicked on links, if you made mistakes, and I thought, I think there might be a better way. And if I'm my own boss figuring out that better way, oh my gosh, that would be cool too. I'd love that. But it was risky, Zach, because you don't just decide to start a business and you got revenue coming in. You have no revenue. So I did it a smart way, Zach. I think I went to work for a managed service provider that had 12 employees and 50 clients. And I built CyberHoot with my co-founders over the course of 5 to 6 years, from 2014 to 2019, when we finally had a product market fit solution in place. And I had a salary at that MSP while I was there. It was probably 1/5, 1/6 of what I could make on the open market working if I had gotten a new corporate job. But the owner of that MSP, Tim Martin, was amazing. He let me develop the product and test it on his clients, and he was 100% all in on it because he saw the results. The results were amazing almost from the get-go. SMBs weren't in the habit of training their employees back then. They weren't in the habit of providing positive reinforcement training. They were in the habit of ignoring cybersecurity. And of course, ransomware, business email compromise, wire fraud was happening then, just not to the same extent as it happens today. So that's really me in a nutshell, and the impetus of how I sit here before you today as CEO and co-founder of CyberHoot, a learning management platform built on psychology from my background, on education, and cybersecurity. If you think of those as a Venn diagram, circles, the center of that overlapping 3 circles of education, psychology, and cybersecurity is CyberHoot. We're a multidisciplinary approach to changing behaviors through positive reinforcement instead of punishment and shame. And it really appeals to a lot of people.
I imagine so in my time in Domino's, that was basically the same thing. You have to create circumstances where people are gaining dopamine and serotonin and all the positive chemicals than losing it when they're in the environment. And I know, like, people who are listening, like, oh, here Zach goes again with the neurochemistry. But like, if you're gonna motivate people to be engaged or do the thing, then you have to make them want to. And if you're gonna make them want to, there has to be something in it for them. Mm-hmm. And the in it for them can be low, right? It can be a positive affirmation, positive reinforcement. It can be a fucking score on a little test or on a whatever. But something that creates that positive hit of dopamine. And the same thing is true whether it's in security and awareness training or whether it's in getting the right amount of pizza toppings on the pizza so that you're able
Yep.
to be, you have to motivate the behavior you want with, with something to be able to reliably get it. I want to hear a little bit about the cross section of psychology and education. And maybe before I ask that question, talk to me a little bit about your choice to do psychology, because when I was choosing to go to school, I chose psychology out of interest. It was like I took for fun classes. It wasn't a part
Right.
of my mandatory for my degree or whatever. But I thought it was important.
Yeah.
I think even now more, I think it's important as we go into a world with artificial intelligence where a lot of those systems, you have to understand how the system is thinking, which is modeled after human thought, if you're going to be able to impact the system. So I think
Right.
psychology is even more important now. So can you talk to me a little bit about your choice to do psychology when you weren't sure of what it was that you wanted to do? And then where is that? Is that still the truth, or is it not the truth anymore?
Excuse me. I chose psychology because I had no other alternative better. I thought, look, I'm a student of people and relationships and the world around me. And psychology was a window into many of the ways in which people viewed the world. You could take it from a behavioral psychologist perspective. That's more of operant conditioning and stimulus and response, rewards and reinforcement behavior systems. You could take it from a cognitive psychology. What is the neurochemical dopamine hits that people are seeking and that sort of thing? You could take it from other angles as well. I took a class on the psychology of women and a class on the psychology of language and how things are very different depending on whose eyes you're looking out from, right? If you're a woman 40 years ago, he was the equivalent of men and women. You could write, he went to the store and you didn't know if it was a man or a woman. Language choices were not equivalent. If you have a master of the domain and a mistress of the domain, those are not equivalent. Even the marriage terms that we use, Mr. Taylor or Mrs. Taylor. Mrs. is a sub to the Mr. or Miss Taylor or Ms. whatever. There's labels that get put on people. So you can look at all kinds of things. And it was wonderful to expose myself to all of these different ways of looking at the world, sort of just different rose-colored lenses. And you realize that your own experience is not the only one that's out there. There's multiple views of the same situation, and they're all right. There's no wrong answer. And a multidisciplinary approach was pretty amazing to me. The program I went into was called Academia, and it had a couple of classes a semester that taught people a particular topic from opposing viewpoints. So I'll give you an example. One was on whales, Zach. And I was like, well, whales, what could psychology and whales have to do? It was a first-year class, but it was taught by a zoologist and an economist. And the general principle of the class was, is it better to harvest all the whales in the ocean and put that money in bank accounts and investments and grow the wealth of, a country that could do whaling faster that way? Or is it better to protect all the whales and keep them in the ocean and do ecotourism and make revenue through the natural habitat of the whales? Or is there a balance between the two? And so one economist was making the case, no, we should harvest them all and put the money in the bank and make investments. And if you want, you can invest in natural resources, renewable energy, whatever. The other zoologist was saying, no, do it from the ecology standpoint. And everyone in the class was on different gradients of that spectrum. But what it taught me was the value of a multidisciplinary approach. There was some case to be made for both perspectives, right? And there were other courses like that shared a multidisciplinary approach. Then fast forward to my founding of my company and what we do. If I just took a cybersecurity approach to building another learning management system, we'd be doing punishment-based gotcha phishing really well now, trying to compete with KnowBe4 and other great big companies out there with billions of dollars in revenue. But that's not a good approach. It doesn't actually change behaviors. And I know scientifically from psychology for 75 years, B.F. Skinner said behaviors that are reinforced, and you could say rewarded, are repeated. Simple as that. That's the underlying theme of CyberHoot. We reward the end users for engagement, and we reward the good behaviors we want to see more of. That's a multidisciplinary approach. And so, that psychology background and all of those multidisciplinary approach is really what was the impetus to founding a better mousetrap for awareness training, if you will.
Do you think that psychology is still important for people today going into this new technological revolution?
I'm sorry, you cut out there for a moment.
Do you think psychology is still important for people on their own journeys today? For instance, going to school or what have you?
Absolutely.
Considering the AI technological revolution.
Yeah, AI is going to change everybody's world, no matter what area of the world you work in. It's going to be so impactful, and it already is. We're seeing a lot of it in some of the jobs numbers and the unemployment rates that are creeping up as, Dell, Microsoft, the biggest companies in the world are laying people off in their support organizations. But from a psychology perspective, psychology has never been more important because it helps you put things into context and into perspective. No matter what field of study you're in, if you're using AI to create something, if you're using AI to help you market, sell, automate, support your products out there, outside, if you don't have a good psychological background or framework within which to operate, these systems have inherent biases. They have inherent mistakes that they make, and you have only psychology to help you understand when an answer to a question is biased in some way or completely wrong. There's this really interesting thing that I think people are just now starting to recognize. Whatever question you ask of AI wants to be your friend, so to speak, and answer it positively for you, whatever your question was. And so you have to prompt AI with very careful questions that don't give a bias in the question. Let me give you an example, Zachary. If I said, what is one of the best podcasts for me to join and talk about my business on? And, in the financial space and in the, technology space, and it might throw out try Unity strategies because AI might have access to my calendar and it might have access to the meeting I had in my calendar today. And it wants to keep me happy and say, well, that's a great podcast. And that's not a bad idea. It's not a wrong answer. But if it didn't have access to my calendar, didn't have access to my booked meetings, it might answer it differently. So there's an inherent bias to it. Now, if you said, give me the top 3 based on viewership, number of episodes, longevity, it might give a totally different answer. So knowing how to use AI to prompt it properly is going to get you better answers. And a lot of that has to do with understanding the underlying biases. And that's psychology is all about biases and understanding them.
And even taking it a step further, the psychology of the person designing the AI system. If you understand, well, ChatGPT is or whatever system is designed to do this. Mm-hmm. Well, if they designed it to do this, then and they're making money like this, then they must want me to do this. But you can't consider the way another person is thinking if you've never been introduced to the idea that other people have, a makeup, a psychological makeup that allows them to take in a perspective. And you said something that I really liked, and I talked a lot about this with new managers. You said everybody's got a perspective and they're all right. And what I love about that is, yes, they are all right because it's right to them. And a lot of new managers come into, whether it be a new, CISO doing security awareness training or somebody teaching somebody how to do inventory. They come in with this, are you right or are you wrong mentality that puts the person that they're training or managing on the defensive, right?
Yep.
But if instead they take an approach of, well, they did their math equation on their side and they came up with this answer. The only way that I can help them out of the woods is if I know where in the woods they are. You have to get them to explain and tell you their perspective. Oh, well, I was looking at the box of pepperoni, or I was looking at this email and I saw that it was this and that, and this is why I clicked this, or this is why I counted it that way. And then now you know where they're at. Because, yeah, they are right in their perspective. Because from what they saw, it was this. But the job as a leader is to lead them to the right space. So their perspective might be correct. And you have to give them the respect of somebody that's competent, because nobody wants to be nobody wants to be like, oh God, here I am the asshole. Here I am the idiot again. Now my CISO's here calling me. Nobody wants to be in that. But when they can have the respect and the confidence of let me understand where you're coming from, then they're open and willing to, this is where we could be. And they're willing to go because it's a team thing.
You're absolutely right. I would probably also emphasize and underscore the following. Our world seems to be bifurcating around a whole bunch of mouthpieces that want to be heard but are doing all the talking. And what I've come to realize is no one's listening. And the only way for you to have a reasonable, rational, give and take conversation with anybody else in this world is to first listen to their point and acknowledge their point and make sure you tell them, here's what I heard you saying, Zachary. Am I correct? Did I understand you correctly? Because the moment you enlighten the other person with the reflection of their point and you convince them that you were listening to what they said, you understood what they said, that is the very first and only time they begin to listen. If you instead are fighting to get a word in edgewise and say, no, Zachary, this is what we should be talking about, and they're doing the same thing, you never get to that common ground where people listen. There's an old saying in a book that I forget who wrote it, but I'm sure someone on the comments will tell us, seek first to understand, then to be understood. I think it was Franklin Covey. And truthfully, if you want to have a meaningful relationship and conversation with a spouse, a son, a daughter, a parent, anybody important in your workforce, your workplace, listen first. Make sure you understand the perspective and the perception of the other person. And only once you've convinced them that you're listening to them, can you then provide an alternate perspective or a corroborating perspective if you're on the same page.
I believe that's where trust is built.
Yes.
She's like, how could you possibly respond if you've not listened to me? I can't trust what you're saying if you haven't considered what I've said.
Right.
So, it's like, I don't even like having conversations like that because it feels like a waste of time.
Right. You're absolutely right. That happens to be psychology 101 too, by the way.
Really? That it's explain what you mean.
Well, psychology says if you're trying to persuade someone, it could be a debate, it could be public speaking, it could be leadership of a company, and you want to make sure everyone's on the same page with your agenda, you can't just dictate that agenda as a leader. You have to canvass your employees and say, Where do you see us right now? Where do you see us right now? And if you convince the employees that you've heard multiple opinions and perspectives on where the company's at, and then you synthesize it, and when you present, this is where I've heard us, we are, this is where I think we need to be going, and these are the steps in between, and I only have this knowledge thanks to all of you who spent time listening and talking to me and sharing your opinions. Then everyone will get behind you, or maybe not everyone, but the majority. If instead you just arrive on the scene as the new CEO of the company and say, this is where we're going, and you didn't talk to anybody, there will be, mutiny on the bounty, right? No one's going to go along with you.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's grounded in psychology.
Thank you for that. We're coming up here on 12:30, and I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to talk about topic of the day, which is how we make security and awareness training actually work. There's two thoughts here that I have kind of left over from you taking us through your entrepreneurial journey, and one of them is related to overcomplicating the stack. And I think this probably ties into at least cybersecurity processes. Do you think it's worth diving into what that experience was like in overcomplicating security as it relates to security and awareness training as a whole, or should we save it for another conversation?
Well, I mean, I think they're definitely related, but I don't think there's a direct leap from what we built back in the web hosting days, early days of the internet, being overly complicated. I guess what you could say is that when you overly complicate a system, it becomes very difficult to maintain, to manage, to administer. And those are all problems for the staff that you're allowed to use to run the show. In the old outsourcing days of IBM, EDS, AT&T, CSC, these great big consulting firms, they would sign up these major multi-million-dollar deals, and then over the course of time, they would cut funding to the individuals and the teams, and you had to get more efficient. Every year, you had to do more with less. You had fewer resources. I mean, there was probably 5 years I never got one raise in CSC. I got enormously great experiences that I was able to parlay a career growth from, but I didn't get a lot of money on raises and things because they were always trying to do more with less. And the message there was, if you overly complicate things, it's very difficult to do more with less. But as it pertains to cyber awareness training and changing behaviors, not a lot of overlap between how that was done and what we need to do to change or to actually change behaviors and to teach people the skills they need in a way where they A, pay attention, B, they consume the concepts, and they are able to internalize it and live it. That's not how the cybersecurity industry has been working for the last 20 years. It's been focusing almost wholeheartedly, Zach, on punishing the bad behaviors we have to stop. If you click on a phishing link, it could be the worst thing ever for our company. We have to stop you from clicking, no matter what. Punish it, fire people, send them fake email messages every day for a year until they stop clicking. That ignores psychology, because what that does is it gets people to give up. They disengage. They abdicate responsibility. They have nothing but apathy towards cyber literacy or cyber smarts because they've been punished one too many times. Imagine dog training. You put a shock collar on a dog and you zap the heck out of that dog at the dog park, trying to teach it to come and to sit and to stay. And suddenly the dog just shuts down. The dog, and that's the best case scenario, right? The worst case is the dog turns vicious and attacks you for zapping it one too many times, right? But neither scenario are good. And no one says or listening to this would think, oh, that dog doesn't matter because that dog learned all the skills it needed. Now it'll sit when you tell it to sit. It'll come when you call, and it'll stay when you tell it to stay. That dog has learned nothing, except that when it goes to the dog park, it's going to get shocked. And so it stops wanting to go, and it hides in the corner when you pull out the leash to go outside. Now change that scenario to treat-based approach. Take out the dog's favorite treats, food motivation. Say, hey buddy, we're going to go to the dog park. You want a treat? Here's a treat. We're going to go. We're going to learn some things. And you say, come, and it comes. And every once in a while you give it a treat. Stay, and you give it a treat. Go away, you come back. Oh, good dog, you were there. Here's another treat. You're rewarding the good behaviors that you want to see more of. And the dog is recognizing certain commands with treats, and it's on an intermittent reward schedule. Psychology 101 says a slot machine is the most powerful reinforcer of behavior of all time because it's an endorphin rush when you win, but you never know when you're going to win. So you keep pulling, right? Well, the dog doesn't know when he's going to get the next treat, but he knows if he does the things that you're telling him to do, a treat's going to happen. If I come, I might get a treat. If I sit, when he says sit, I might get a treat. If I roll over, if I stay, if I jump this thing, if I do that, I'm going to get a treat. And they are food motivated. And so after a while, you can pare back the treats, and the dog still does those behaviors because it doesn't think it has to have it every time or he stops doing it. The dogs internalize the behaviors for sit, stay, come, etc. People are not much different.
They're not different at all. And part of the habitualization of those actions are literal neural pathways in the brain. And the creating of the motivation to do them, they may be motivated to go down that pathway. I like to imagine the neural pathways as like sledding down a hill. They may be motivated to go that direction because you're standing over there with a steak bone, and you're like, I'm going to slide this way down the hill, and that's motivating. But then when you're not there, how do you continue to do that? How do you continue to get people to click the right spot on to be checking thoroughly on their emails or to be thoughtful with their passwords? And it starts with getting them to do it. But I think what I hear you saying is the next stage is to get them to do it on their own. And to be able to do that, you have to build those neural pathways so that the thing that feels most right is to do the correct behavior so that it starts happening as a habit.
So there's some educational background that helps with this analogy you're building, and then there's some psychology and neural pathways. You're right. The biggest problem today in cybersecurity is a lack of engagement, a lack of people believing they can learn the right things because they've been punished one too many times. And so they give up. They're like, why would I go to the dog park? I'm going to get zapped. Why would I try and figure out if this email is safe to click on or not? I'm just going to fail and have 45-minute video assigned to me, or be written up, or be shamed by my boss in a public forum, or be fired.
That's a good way to get people to not even open their email at all. All of a sudden, it's just full.
Exactly. So instead, what we do is we use what good teachers have long learned and known, and this is a proven psychology theory, is that for engagement, you have to reward the little steps towards learning a skill. And with properly timed small rewards, you don't want to give huge rewards because that takes the locus of control. This is a psychology term. Is the locus of control outside the person or inside the person? That is the key to awareness and changing behaviors in the long run. Is you have to get people engaged enough to say, oh my God, this isn't that hard. I can learn this stuff. I know what this is. I'm not dumb. I'm smart. I figured this out. And when someone figures it out and they've engaged just enough with maybe a few external rewards to get them there, to play the game, then suddenly they realize they can learn it. Then what teachers and educators have long known is that you're just about done your job because you've created a lifelong learner of a particular topic. I can figure this out. I'm going to learn it because I enjoy being smart about this. I enjoy knowing when I can click and when I can't click, and why, what the damage could be. And so that becomes an internal motivation with just a little bit of external motivation to kick it all off, kind of like activation energy.
Yeah. Well, yes, amazing. I almost shot through my seat when you started talking about internal and external locuses of control. When I hire, I look for internal locus of control. Um, I don't look for, oh my God, people. When I sit down with small businesses and restaurants in particular, because those are the ones that need to do the most hiring. They're like, all right, so what are the questions? How are we going to do this? And I'm kind of like walking them through, and it's always, they're shocked that we're focused on kind of not super hard, direct questions, but it's because it's about figuring out who they are, the person,
Mm-hmm.
and the way they think about problems, And if you give somebody, hey, do you ever have experience with CSS?
Hey, sorry to interrupt, but I think you
Yeah.
went silent again.
Oh, did I? Can you hear me now? Oh my! It looks like. Are you able to hear me now?
Still can't hear you.
Really? I'll be a son of a gun. Hold on one second. How about now? It looks
We're
like
having a couple of issues here, but we're going to fix them right away. Here he is.
It looks like my thing's registering. It's registering on there, and it's registering.
All right, I'm not hearing you, Zach. Okay, it's registering. Gotcha. All right, so Zach will be back with us in a moment.
No.
So just to go back, entertain you folks while Zach's reconnecting to sound, the internal versus external locus of control is very straightforward when it comes to psychological perspectives, psychological research. But it is just, is the person internally motivated to do something or externally motivated? When you do fake email phish testing with people, you're creating an external control to prevent the clicks. And that is always going to be external. So if the person doesn't care about the consequence, they're going to click anyways. If the person is forgetful and forgets that they could be punished for it, they're going to click anyways. If there's Taylor Swift tickets for your teenage daughter, no matter what you do, they're going to click if they don't have any other mechanism internal to themselves to stop the clicking. That's where you need to create an internal set of rules, a rubric, and have people practice over and over again. Zach's back. Hey, Zach.
Test.
Oh, I can't hear you, though.
I think it's on your side.
Oh, it might be on my side. Let me see here. Okay, let me see if I can fix that. Audio. Yeah, it was on my side, so there we go.
Test.
I'm wondering if you can hear me now.
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Okay, I know what happened.
Did it run out of Bluetooth battery? I bet it did. It was a Bluetooth battery problem?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, we both we're this is the benefit. So the cool thing about doing a show like this is we can talk to people all over the world. It's just an hour of people's time, plus or minus, and it's relatively low weight to record, cut up, and get things out there. But the negative is sometimes we have some me forgetting to undo my mic and other audio issues. So I appreciate you kind of rolling with the flow and being willing to. You took over the ship, man. I was really grateful for that. That was cool.
No problem, Zach. It's yeah, we're here for each other. I'm internally motivated to help us succeed.
That's it, man. That's it. So if I could talk a little bit about the hiring thing and the internal, external, because I like I said, I jumped out of my seat. I was so excited. When I sit down with small businesses and restaurants and we're talking about hiring, they're always surprised because I'm asking simple questions, quick questions that kind of allow people to drop their guard. And the thing is when you go in with kind of a mathematical, obvious question, like, do you have experience with CSS? Have you done this? They know what you want to hear. They don't want to hear you say, no, I don't have that experience. They don't want to hear you, they want to tell you the right thing so they get the job.
Hmm.
But as as a hirer, you're looking for the person that is going to be honest with you,
Hmm.
that is going to tell you when they don't know something so that they can grow, that internal motivation.
Hmm.
So I'm looking for in interviewing, hey, tell me about a time that you didn't know something and you had to figure it out. Tell me about a time you dealt with a customer that wasn't happy and how you solved it. Tell me about a time. And then it's not mathematical. You take the math out of it, you go into the gray space with them, and you get to see, did they put it on the customer and they were in a state of external locus of control where
Hmm.
that customer was never going to be satisfied no matter what because of this? Or did they say, I, X, Y, and Z, and here's where I failed, here's where they were challenging, you know, because that's where you're able to get into the gray and see how their brain works. And that's what you should
Exactly.
hire on.
100%. And you've reminded me of a book I listened to recently, Dan Martell, Software as a Science book. Highly recommend it. Throw a shout out to Dan. He wrote a great book with 3 other authors. But one of the things they said is when they go to hire someone for a software as a service leadership position, one of his favorite questions is, tell me how you've excelled at some personal activity. Like, are you a world class golfer, swimmer, mountain biker, this or that? And the reason they go to that is because that measures whether someone can figure things out to an elite level and be able to accomplish an enormous amount when they set their mind to it, right? It might be chess, it might be checkers, not checkers, but it might be, a thought process or coding or whatever. But if you've achieved a high level of proficiency in your life on a particular area, that proves that you know how to self motivate yourself to learn something at an extreme level of performance. And that's what real leaders and successful entrepreneurs need to succeed. And you need people like that in your business. So asking that really off the wall question, like, what's a subject that you're the most competent in and how did you get there, is an amazing insight into a self-motivated learner who, I could share a story about myself here. My mother and I played Scrabble all the time we were kids. We'd go to the Parry Sound, Ontario. We'd play Scrabble, and I'd lose, and lost for a long, long time because she was much older and wiser than me, etc. As kids,
Right.
I'm talking 10, 12, 14 years of age.
Oh,
And
yeah.
my brothers, I have all kinds of brothers, and they would beat me too. So I decided I'm sick of losing at this game. So I went and I studied. I studied the 2-letter words, the 3-letter words, the J words, the Z words, the Q words, the W words, all the high point words. And I showed up one Thanksgiving to my brother's house, and I played my brother the first game in the afternoon, and I beat him, and he was completely beside himself because he is used to winning.
Yeah.
So no harm, no foul. He goes, "Let's play again after dinner."
He's like, we're cleaning this fluke up
That's
immediately
right.
after dinner.
Cleaning it immediately. So later that night, we played. I think his wife went to bed, and she gets up the next morning and she looks at me. She goes, "How did it go last night?" I said, "I beat Dan again." My brother's name is Dan. And she looks at me and she goes, "Somebody's been practicing, right?" And I had studied my ass off. I even had, like, I'm a computer guy, so I was doing it on my phone. I was studying the word list, but I set out to become a better Scrabble player, and I became so good. It was actually counterproductive because no one wants to play me anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not good, world class good. Like, I don't have a great memory, so I'm not going to play in the Scrabble tournaments of the world, but I can beat most people that I know
But
because
but Words with Friends isn't on your phone because nobody wants to play.
exactly right. So, but that's the kind of thing that Dan Martell talked about. If you can get to a high level of competency because you set your mind, you set your goal on something, and you accomplish it. And I think that's an important lesson for all of us if we're running businesses and trying to hire people. That's a very important psychological phenomenon.
Absolutely. Well, we've got about 12 minutes left. I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time to do some outro related things. let's hit some of the highlights here. And thank you for being willing to kind of go on the tangents in this conversation. Let's hit some of the highlights as it relates to how we make security awareness training work, and maybe if we need an overview of what constitutes security awareness training.
Well, as a cybersecurity professional for 30 years, the same attacks have worked for the last 25 years. And this has been studied by experts across the world. They say phishing is still the number one way people are hacked, companies are breached. Password hygiene is the second way. And third, which is a growing area, is zero-day attacks and unpatched system attacks or misconfigurations of cloud applications. All of that is in with the technology stack. So
tell us what 0 days are. Forgive me.
A 0 day is a vulnerability in a software product that has no fix. There's no patch to prevent someone from taking advantage of it. In the last 18 to 24 months, SSL, secure socket layer VPNs, have had dozens to hundreds of 0 day vulnerabilities from FortiGates and Sonic Walls and other products on the market. Hackers found a hole in the way the technology was constructed together for the last 15 years, and they were exploiting it over and over again in all different places, leading to breaches out the wazoo. It was terrible for the last 24 months. If you're a product manager at those companies, you're pulling your hair out because you can't believe there's yet another one. Oh my God. But those lead to attacks that are successful with no human intervention required, right? The majority of attacks, however, some say up to 90% of breaches are tied back to human error, mistakes on clicking on phishing links in an email, or reusing passwords everywhere you go, or not turning on multi-factor authentication. So if that's the truth, that 80 to 90% of breaches are tied to human error, then we need to train humans to be a little bit smarter and a little bit more careful. But because cybersecurity is focused so heavily on punishing mistakes, people have disengaged, right? At the Black Hat conference just 3 weeks ago, security researchers from the University of San Diego and Chicago presented a study of 20,000 employees at a healthcare provider. Over the course of 9 months, they phish tested these people with the traditional gotcha phishing tests, sending emails to inboxes to see if people in that company would click on them in error because it was clear signs of phishing and they didn't know any better. They clicked. So they concluded that all the awareness training of the world,
I was trying to apologize for coughing and then I was muting. Forgive me. All the security awareness training in the world
that they delivered to those staff members yielded 1.7% improvement. 1.7%. So it didn't work.
What would be statistically significant?
Well, I think with 20,000 users, 1.7% is potentially significant, but it's meaningless. In practical terms, it says if you send 100 phishing emails and you get people to click on 10 of them, the people trained would only click on 9. The people not trained would maybe click on 10.
So you're not protecting yourself.
You're not doing anything useful.
And you're spending money. So like the dollar per percent safe is.
Well, yeah, it's not. It's really just
investment.
Their conclusion, and it reiterated a study from the University of Zurich from 2022 that said they actually concluded worse. They said that traditional fake email gotcha testing actually leads people to click on more phishing links, not fewer. Counterproductive, counterintuitively. They said that right in their findings. The reality is when you focus on punishing people, it's an external locus of control. It doesn't get internalized, and people stop caring, they stop engaging, and they stop learning. So if you want to have security awareness training that actually works, the first thing you have to do is make it fun, entertaining, gamification, and no punishment whatsoever, or else you risk disengaging your employees. In fact, you've got to overcome the previous experience of all your employees who already are disengaged because they've been punished too much.
Some people are probably sitting there thinking, well, what about the people that are not getting it and are at risk? And when you're saying don't punish them, and the answer is if you have somebody that is showing for
reasons related to their motivations, that they're either not capable or unwilling to grow, that is different than punishing them for the mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And
Correct.
those types of conversations within leadership, it can be hard because those uncomfortable conversations can be hard. But
Mm-hmm.
breaking apart the difference when you're having a disciplinary conversation, it's not the fact that you hit the link. It's the fact that over the course of 2 years, we've made no progress
Right.
in your growth here. Those are two totally different circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
The individual will take it differently. And the people that have made progress
Mm-hmm.
don't want to see the person not making progress continue to not make progress. So you have to be careful there with the no discipline, but the discipline is related to the behaviors, not related to the mistakes.
Correct.
Does that sound right?
It does. It makes perfect sense. Yes, you can have an employee who has a performance improvement plan that can't get to the point where they can stay working for your company because they haven't delivered on their job responsibilities, period. End of story. But a different problem is if you punish everyone in your company for clicking on links that you send, and this was a thread in Reddit on Delta Airlines flight attendant. She had perfect attendance. She got an email in her inbox that said, "We want to recognize you for perfect attendance." She knew that most of her other flight attendants never cared, and she was always, while she was on time every single time, many of her colleagues and other flight attendants didn't care and went out of their way to cause problems, to call in sick on a hangnail day or what have you. So she clicked on it and she was told, "Oh, I'm sorry, this is a phishing test. You failed." She was ready to quit. She was madder than a hornet. Her husband was the one writing the Reddit thread because she couldn't type it up. She was so mad and she was so upset. This is an example of how you can really screw over your employees with a poorly timed, a poorly worded, a poorly chosen phishing test that punishes failures. Instead of teaching her, hey, you really ought to have looked at the sender of the domain, because if it's not from delta.com, and if you ignore the banner message that says this is from outside the company, not inside the company, and teach her all these good automatic response mechanisms that she's internalized over dozens and dozens of practice attempts with what CyberHoot calls our hoot fish simulation, teaching you about typo squatted domain names that might even be more tricky than just this generic email that she clicked on. Then you've got muscle memory, and then people know internally, like, hey, I know how to spot this, even if it's on a topic that's really interesting to me. I've never seen a reward for perfect attendance email before. Let me just go and check the sending domain. Oh my God, that's not Delta. I almost clicked. Okay, delete. Off you go. Reinforcing the behaviors you want to see more of and practicing those and making it low cost and fun and gamified will encourage engagement, which then leads to internal locus of control, which then leads to actually learning the behaviors you need to be safe personally and professionally online. That's what everything that we've done in our platform at CyberHoot, the company I co-founded 11 years ago, is focused upon. If you ask ChatGPT or if you ask Claude what makes CyberHoot unique, it's going to tell you a bunch of things around punishment versus rewards and carrots versus sticks, right? We give carrots, we give rewards, we get engagement, and people can accomplish things and feel a personal responsibility and a personal growth from learning these things.
Craig, is there anything else that we should cover? I think that we've given a lot of really valuable, tangible, actionable things today. Was there anything else we should hit related to how to make security awareness training work?
If you're struggling with compliance, if you're struggling with your program, try to introduce little rewards, make it fun, entertaining, short. Don't make it, don't do it once a year, because that's like going to the gym once a year and getting in shape. You're going to hurt yourself. Make it small, micro trainings. I like to think of our CyberHoot stuff as HIT, high intensity training in very small intervals, just multiple times a year, once a month, twice a month, and you can get in cyber literate shape. that works in physical fitness. It works in cyber literacy.
Very cool. Craig, give us the outro and the why for reaching out to CyberHoot, and we'll get to the second half of the Tuesday here.
Sure, thank you. So if you want to reach out to CyberHoot and learn more, email sales@cyberhoot.com or visit cyberhoot.com and just look at the website. There's spots for a direct relationship. There's spots for resellers and MSPs to sign up and resell the product. We give a free 30-day trial to everyone, no matter the case. Also, we give it away free for individuals. So if you're listening to this and you said, maybe I'll bring it to my company, maybe I won't, let me try it out. Go to cyberhoot.com/individuals with an S, and you can register for free for life. We'll give it to you as long as you want for yourself personally. Send that link to your family member that needs a little bit of help, or your friend who was breached recently and needs a help. It's totally free and it's positive. So outside of that, anyone listening to this that converts from a free account to a paid account will give you 20% off for a year from however many users you enroll, whatever, with TriUnity Strategies as the referral partner. So there's a question in the registration that says, how'd you hear about us? Put TriUnity Strategies, 20% off automatically for you for a year. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Zach. I didn't know before I came on this podcast that you had a history of psychology in the background, but had I known that, I probably would have made you do it last week or the week before, because I'm so excited to be here with someone that gets it, that understands it, and that lives it in all that you're doing. So really excellent to meet you.
I appreciate you saying that, Craig. It was a ton of fun. I hope we can do it again. I know the landscape is ever changing, so I'm sure there'll be many opportunities for us to catch up and keep the ball moving. I appreciate the compliment, and I appreciate you helping educate the community and the good things that you're doing to support people being secure online.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Happy Tuesday, everybody. We have another cybersecurity related podcast next week. We're going to be talking about how fraudsters typically try to do financial fraud. So we're going to be breaking into some specific attacks next week with a wonderful MSP owned by Matt Quayman. And Craig, thank you again for being here. Everybody have a great rest of your week.
Bye now.
Bye.